You guys heard that. Don't talk too long. All right. Good morning, everyone. We've got a stacked panel this morning, so I'm getting my timer out because I've got to channel my inner John and keep us on schedule.
Be nice.
Exactly. Friendly but firm. All right, good morning, everyone. First, want to thank NY-GEO for inviting our guests and myself to speak on the panel this morning. Super interesting topic. Our topic this morning, how will AI impact the geothermal industry? And I want to first time myself so my lead-in doesn't take too long. But I wanted to start off briefly by just saying, I think AI is an unusually accessible technology relative to its capabilities. And I think that's something that sets AI apart from some of the other technologies that the industry might use. And this matters for geo, which I think, is still a small but growing and often capital-constrained industry. So unlike other capital-rich industries like, say, oil and gas, finance, unlike those industries that have large R&D budgets, bespoke software ecosystems, and deep technical tooling, historically that's meant that geothermal has had to operate with some imperfect tools. But AI changes that dynamic. So now for, depending on your level, $30 a month, you can have the capabilities of a new analyst, a software developer, project manager, even in some cases a remote technician helping you troubleshoot issues in the field. And that's essentially available to everyone right now today if you pull out your phone or your laptop. So of course I'm talking about all the tools that you've heard the names, the Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, pick your favorite one of the week. Flavor of the week I think is what it's going to be like for a while. But these tools can be used to improve our industry, and it's imperative that we use them because I think the competitive reality is that the incumbent technologies that we're trying to eclipse with Geo certainly will use them and adopt them at a rapid pace as well. And so the purpose of this panel is to show some real examples of how AI is being used today and demonstrating how it's changing some of the workflows and sort of efforts that the panelists are tackling. So, like I said, we've got a stacked panel. I'm going to move us quite along. I have the rare, I'm not sure how I got this privilege, but John asked me to give my example first, which I'm going to keep super short, and then I'll hand it over to all of our panelists and we'll have them come up and talk through a few examples. So, I'm Brian Zimmerly. I head our innovation efforts at Brightcore Energy. We do a mix of efficiency, solar, and geothermal. And as head of innovation at Brightcore, I'm sort of mandated with working on new products and services. And so my example I kept shorter than everyone else's so that they can take up most of the time. But as a new product developer and some of the cool things we're working on at Brightcore, I often need to customize presentations or for prospective customers depending on their unique needs. So this is a problem. I've got a small but nimble team, and we want to be moving very rapidly to present these things to our customers. The platforms I use, ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, and what I'll do is I'll translate my product talking points into something that's customer relevant, specifically tailored to that customer that I'm talking to on any given day. And so the types of inputs that I might use are taking my existing product content or talking points, entering anonymous generalized email about them. We've got to be sensitive to the security aspect of this, and list the key points that I want to convey to them. So one customer may be very interested in decarbonization, another customer is very focused on savings. One is more interested in the CapEx, the other might be interested in the OpEx opportunity. And so the result is that I get this custom tailored presentation slide in literally seconds that I can also add additional ideas or options for how to tailor that content for them. And then what I really love about some of these tools is that I ask it to give me follow-up questions like, what am I not thinking about? help me develop the thinking on this in a way that I can, better serve our customers. And so the benefit here is that, each presentation speaks specifically to that customer and improves my ability to communicate the value of the product that I might be talking to them about. So I'll cap it there. That was 4 minutes. Now everyone else has 6-minute limit. I've set the standard for 4 minutes 30. I'm eating up my time in the transition, but I think next we have Erich, who will give us an example from Jouler.
Hi everybody, my name is Erich Ryan and I'm the founder of Jouler, and we're building a platform to support the measurement, verification, and economic analysis for large district-scale network geothermal systems. So an AI use case that's in my workflow typically is for policy analysis. Whether it's the federal ITC, state-level incentives, or utility regulation, these kind of policy changes can have a big impact on your business and use cases, but frankly, no one wants to go and read 100-page utility dockets. So what I do is I use Claude, and this is my time to point out that Claude is built by Anthropic, just like ChatGPT is built by OpenAI. The tools and models that you use are distinct from the companies that build them, just like the iPhone is built by Apple. It's important to understand that nuance. So what I do for policy analysis is I'll upload these documents into Claude, and I'll ask targeted questions about things that affect me. And there's kind of two channels that I like to take in this route. You can upload a single document and get very specific information about, say, a specific UTENJA case filing, or you can upload multiple documents and get comparisons across them, like, say, 5 incentive programs across states to compare and contrast what the best benefits are for geothermal heat pumps in these different state programs. The benefit of this is you can get targeted answers to the questions that you need, and something specifically that I like to do is get direct reference points that say, hey, in document 4, appendix 6, page 79, here's the information you need. So when you go and talk to your lawyer, your accountant, customer, whoever it may be, you have a key reference point that makes you sound a little more intelligent about these policy-related items. And the benefit of this is you don't have to spend time reading utility dockets, and you don't have to rely on someone else to interpret them for you. You can go in directly and get the answers that you need yourself. But I want to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of artificial intelligence. When we talk about Claude or ChatGPT, Gemini, we're typically talking about LLMs, large language models. And essentially how these models were built were they took 20+ years of data from the internet in the form of our articles, forums, and documents, and created an unbelievable text data set that they used to train these models so that they can do what they do today. And so these models typically thrive on text-based tasks, such as reading policy documents. Or another often use case for me is code generation, where you're creating text that runs a computer program. And there's a lot of general use cases for these kind of off-the-shelf models in your day-to-day workflows that can bring a lot of value to your business. But if we want to talk about unlocking the true value of AI for the geothermal industry, we need to start with the fundamentals. I like to talk about network geothermal, so my hypothetical example will be you have a big network geothermal system, and you want to optimize to meet your different heating and cooling loads while minimizing your electricity costs in real time. To answer that question, you need a bunch of different data streams: loop thermal balance, building energy demand profiles, time of use electricity pricing, weather predictions, and you can kind of work that all together and build an AI model on top of that that can tell you operational characteristics, when to turn things on and off, and ultimately lower the price so that we can solve the affordability crisis. That sounds great, but we're not capable of doing that as an industry yet. To get to that point, we need to build the data infrastructure, and that starts first with standardized data collection. We need to understand what kind of data we're collecting, where we're collecting it, what frequency we're collecting it at, and how we're going to store it, and really start treating the data of these systems as an essential piece of the infrastructure investment. After that, we can do things like physics-based enrichment through thermodynamic-based modeling or digital twin architectures. This lets us turn raw metered data into high-fidelity, engineering-grade data sets that can offer greater insights into the operations and value of these kind of systems. Finally, we need cross-deployment aggregation. Data from 1 or 2 isolated projects isn't going to be enough to create a capable AI model. So we need a wide corpus of data that includes different network topologies, building stocks, weather profiles, and everything else, so that we can create a highly capable artificial intelligence that can answer the questions that we want answered. AI is undoubtedly a transformative technology, and to unlock the full potential for the geothermal industry, we need to focus on the fundamentals first. Thank you. Have a good time. Song and dance here.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Declan Ivers, and I am the maintenance specialist for Aztech Geothermal. I'm responsible for providing the annual care for the 500 plus customers that Aztech services. These are three of the biggest ways that I have found to use AI on a ground level application. How can I use it as a field technician instead of, all of the bigger management projects, and how can I really start to make the changes that can affect my job? The first is scheduling. The work itself isn't very difficult, but knowing where I should be and when I should be there often takes the biggest part of my time. By using ChatGPT, I can take the scheduling process from about 4.5 hours to around 30 minutes. This is a simple example of the kind of data that I would use for ChatGPT. The customer names are all generated just randomly, so that way they're a little bit easier to tell. And as you notice, the availabilities are all different. Trying to find a geographical alignment with all of these, as well as respecting availability, is an absolute nightmare. Now, scaling this up to 15 to 20 times every single 2-3 weeks often is one of the biggest lags in keeping a department moving. Once I input the locational data and the parameters for my day, when I start my first call and when I would like to start heading home, this is the sort of data that ChatGPT will give me. Instead of having to balance out a spaghetti of different customers, I can simply look at each one individually and ask them, is this time available? Can I come here? If they say yes, move on to the next. It takes out a lot of the brain power so I can just keep working and keep in the field. The next aspect is field diagnostics. A lot of time with lack of experience, I don't have knowledge in outside technology. I am specialized entirely in geothermal, and oftentimes that can be a detriment to me. A lot of times, sometimes I just need to input my problems into ChatGPT, and it can bring new ideas into light and ideas that I never thought of before to actually start diagnosing. Whether it be photographs of what I'm looking at, or just explaining what my customer is explaining to me, this can start the translation process. This here definitely doesn't look a whole lot of much, but this is an example of what I can give into ChatGPT. It doesn't matter the format that I use. I can use either complicated terms or very, very simple terms, and the chat will be able to understand it at my level and translate it to whatever other level I need it at. From this simple photograph, all I had to do was tell the ChatGPT that it was throwing a simple high-pressure fault, and its response looked exactly like this. It pointed out that I had a very poor heat exchange and possible causes that I never considered beforehand. I was never able to find the problem until turning over to ChatGPT and Grok for outside ideas. It pointed out that I had a scaled and fouled condenser, of which I was able to repair. Instead of having to call my manager and tie him up for his time and experience, I was able to rely on the ChatGPT, which pulled from outside sources like the internet. Lastly, the biggest one is improving reports and documentation. Oftentimes, I lack proper wording to express the ideas that are in my head and create the finite wording. ChatGPT can take those very, very simplistic and crude terms and create it into something much more beautiful and more presentable in a wider demographic. These here are some of the ways that I use it in more of an office application, from creating email templates that I send out every single month in a monthly email blast to making this entire presentation. I've never done a presentation before, so the first thing I did was turn to ChatGPT, and it gave me the guidelines on how to put slides together, what to say, and where my head should be so I can keep moving forward. It starts to bridge the gap of field technicians to engineers and larger projects where we don't have that understanding. Thank you, folks.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is John Rathbone. I am the CEO and co-founder of Rathco ENG. We are a cradle-to-cradle engineering company helping customers figure out what to do. Although 70% of our projects are geothermal, we are a technology-neutral company, so we do a lot of district energy or TENS projects, wastewater energy, large-scale industrial heat capture, including data centers and biomass and a few others. But essentially, we just like to follow the numbers and stay as completely neutral as possible. But with that said, when we do that, roughly about 7 out of 10 of our projects land on geo-exchange systems. And I'm from Toronto, and we've had a very progressive building code in Toronto, which is I think the largest real estate development market in North America. And so we've done over 65 high-rise geo-exchange projects over the last 5 years. So we have a really deep amount of knowledge and experience on how to implement these types of systems. And before that, I used to work for a Danish-based engineering company, and I got exposed to AI before ChatGPT hit mainstream. So I'm kind of an AI hipster in terms of like I was into AI before it was cool. And it kind of blew my mind, and it scared the crap out of me, to be honest, because I saw the beginning of the end of my profession. And I was only 30 at the time, and that was way too young to be seeing the end. And so but the more I got into the industry, the more I started to realize that adoption was a lot slower than the creation of these new technologies. And I hope today that we can kind of show you how to adopt these types of things. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to how we're doing it. And we're going to be an unrecognizable engineering firm in about 2 years from now is my prediction. That's how quickly things are going. So will AI impact geothermal? Yes, it's going to impact everything. And it's not an if, it's a what and a how. It's already started, so not to be too dramatic, if you're not staying up with things, you're already behind the minority of us that are proceeding at the speed of light, essentially, to incorporate these types of things into our workflows. But the most important question is why you want to do it. And this kind of goes back to what I'm about to just say right now. The core of the engineering profession and how we execute geothermal projects is really about relationships and trust. You know, the only reason why we got the job, they already assume we know how to do a good job engineering. That's why we got the job. But why did they pick us over another engineering firm? Well, it's because we have a relationship with that client, and we've earned their trust through either delivering previous projects or being confident or speaking at conferences. And that is not going to change with AI. The other thing about AI, and to be more specific about the technology, large language models, or LLMs, if you hear that thrown around, that's what that is they are far inferior to the physics that we already understand from our textbooks, essentially. It's like taking a chainsaw to cut a stick of butter. It's completely unnecessary to use an LLM to do thermodynamics equations, essentially. So where we're seeing the impact, though, is on everything else to do with the business of AI, including those physics models, though. So we're talking about Claude. I highly encourage you all to download the extension for Excel in Claude. And let's say you have like a simple 4-tab, hydraulic model or whatever your model is, and just talk to Claude like you're talking to your consultant or your expert. Just say, hey, I don't know anything. Please tell me, how can I make this model better? Do you have any recommendations for me? This is why I want to do it. Include the why part in what you're asking it. And you will be absolutely blown away at what it comes back. And it will build you now an 11-tab Excel model that not only does all the things that you want to do, but has asked you, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? And now all of a sudden you have a hydraulic model or whatever your model is that is 5 times better than the wildest model that you've ever conceived of with the smartest people on your team. And because it's in Excel, now you can audit it. You can be accountable. You can be responsible. If you're looking in for any sort of media generation, the Nana Banana by Gemini, which is Google's product, is just phenomenal. And then Copilot, my team's using, we have some people where English is their second language, and they are brilliant engineers, but they really struggle with writing emails to clients. They're intimidated. And we're just like, hey man, just put your raw thoughts into the body of the email and say, can you please improve my communication for this type of audience, whatever. And now people where their language is not English are now writing like very eloquent, easy to understand communications to our clients, and our clients are really now able to comprehend the value of the engineering. So it's really starting to improve our business tremendously. So something, I guess I skipped ahead here, but everything is improving rapidly kind of around the nucleus of the core part of engineering while we're improving the core. But if you're going to rely on an LLM to improve the core of your business, be cautious, because when you're a professional engineer, we have an obligation both legally and ethically to our professional organization. If you don't understand how that AI came to that answer and you're going to put your stamp on it, that's a humongous risk. And I think that your insurance company might want to have a chat with you. So, but if you can use AI for all of the other parts like sales and marketing, administration, project management, bookkeeping, I'm going to be a one-man marketing team in about 6 months from now, and that's going to save me tens of thousands of dollars, because I'm just going to get AI to help me develop not only the strategy, but all the content and the schedule and the deployment of that marketing. And so it's going to be a profound thing. And we've been, like I said, doing this for a couple of years now. So we have already started to adopt this into our feasibility process, which for people that aren't familiar with feasibility studies in engineering, this is how do I know what to do and how do I justify the decision? So should it be GEO and why? Or should it be an air source heat pump and why? And we have now turned these into products. So instead of our customers coming to us and saying, this is what I want you to do, and then we disappear for 6 weeks and write like a hyper unique proposal that then they take 4 weeks to review, and we negotiate and hem and haw over scope, schedule, and budget. We've just now productized it. It's just a product you can pull off the shelf, and it can be a 2-story, or it can be a 25-story or a 75-story building. It's the same price because we've standardized our processes and we're using the technology to dramatically reduce our internal cost to deliver that type of analysis. So business as usual for what we used to call pre-feasibility studies was about 9 to 12 weeks, or in terms of like detailed design, you look at 9 to 12 months. We're now seeing projects shrink down from months to weeks with the same numbers. And this is now dramatically driving down our internal costs. And so I think some of my other engineering colleagues here might not like this, but we're going to be driving down the cost of delivering professional engineering services quite dramatically in the months ahead, not the years ahead, as a result of this. But then it's going to force us to change our business model at a fundamental level. So there's going to be some really interesting, I think, conversations in, like I said, the months ahead as to how these types of services are delivered in the true interest of delivering the highest value to our customers, essentially. So I only have 6 minutes, but I could talk about this for a day. So if anyone wants to talk with me after, I'm happy to have a conversation. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Greg Shapiro. I'm the COO and co-founder of a group called Hickory. We're a group of owner-operators in the New York City and tri-state area. So even though we have Hickory AI in the name, partly because Hickory.com was squatted by someone who wanted to charge us a lot of money, we think about that parent group as investing a lot in technology and in support for our companies, but we're not here selling AI. We're service provider, installer, ground source heat pump installation with our companies Bell Mechanical and Pac Timco in Westchester and Southern Connecticut. But part of what I thought that I could share today is that because we've scaled a little bit more than I think a lot of companies that are starting to implement AI in our business, there's a little bit that I can share from some of the do's and don'ts, mistakes, and learnings that we've had. We've invested a lot to try to deploy AI into our business. We've got about 300 employees. We're installing thousands of air source heat pumps a year, servicing tens of thousands of customers a year, about 8,000 membership customers. And so a lot of this for us has been thinking about how we handle that in a way that's still staying true to our values and the level of service that we want, because even though we're a little bit bigger, every one of those customers can still eventually find my phone number or one of my partner's phone numbers. So how do we run the business in a way that's actually going to work at that scale and make sure that we're not losing the culture? So a few things here about ways that we're using AI in the business today. Some of these are personal productivity for me. Some of them are things that we've developed more as a platform. The little Hickory icon is next to the things that we've scaled out more in our business and that we've customized more for ourselves. But you know, some of the highlights here, and similar to what other people have mentioned, any kind of Word document is super useful and has been super useful for a couple of years now to be using even chat-based products. So hiring, job descriptions, contract negotiations. We still work with a lot of lawyers for insurance, for vendor and partner contracts, for our third-party ownership leasing models. Found that the LLMs are really good at not just identifying possible issues in contracts, but suggesting nuanced versions and options for language that we could put in there. Some of the things that I'll talk about a little bit more are our employee portal that we started to develop using Claude Code and other tools to build that software in-house in a way that wouldn't have made sense before. Some of our coaching that we do for leads, sales, and phone insights. And I think some of the takeaways from our actual software engineering department that are, I think, informative to the rest of the business and sort of where other parts of our industry are going to be going as these tools spread out more. So first thing that I'll show off a little bit, we call Hickory OS. We're a company implementing something called Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, which I highly recommend. You know, we have a set of cultural values that we want to promote. We have a concept of what we call win the day, which is really just, is everyone in the business aligned to the same goals? And do we know what everyone's doing? And can you see that traction? So we tried to build all of that into a set of tools that we could use because we found that the tools that are out there aren't amazing. And it's probably a little bit small on there, but we turned this into an employee portal. So someone can log in, they can see recognition from their peers, which is something that we really enjoy doing. And we use this as a basis to start adding on all of the other tools that we want people to use. I think this is a little bit overpowered probably for someone who's thinking about personal productivity, but wanted to share it, I think, one, because I'm sure that a lot of the people who are here today are owners or leaders in their business, and they're thinking about how do you manage a group of people. But also, I think if you're thinking from a personal productivity standpoint, the approach for us on all of this has been to take a lot of the separate CRMs and software products that we use. Some of them we've started to say, do we even need to pay for this separately? But some of the others, like our accounting system, we're not going to roll our own accounting system. We pulled the data from every one of those systems into a database in GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, and then we pull all of that data back into tools like this or into Claude for people to be able to consume from there. But the tools are really good now. If you pick one tool and you hook up your personal accounts for your personal Gmail or personal Outlook, your logins to a lot of these systems, you can get access to that data in something like Claude Code, which I'll talk about in a second, and use that reasoning model to put together reports, put together documents, and I think you'll almost always find that that's a lot better than clicking the AI enhance button that's provided by whatever tool. Another bit, though I'll skip over, I'll go quickly just because of time shortage. But one thing I wanted to mention, so this is we call a lead command center. So part of what we're doing is we're monitoring for possible leads, whether it's like a service follow-up or a sales call. We're merging those using AI. We're using Gemini to transcribe audio and identify insights as to what's going on there, which we found is the best model for that. Someone else mentioned it, but I used Nano Banana, which is Google's best image processing model, to take this image and apply over the customer names with sort of anonymized asterisks. And I'd say that Nano Banana is the only model that I found that can make those individual changes without messing up the rest of the image. Final piece on code. So one of the things that I think is a really great takeaway as a leader that we learned first in our software development team is that you want to make sure that you're empowering your top people to make sure that they're the ones who are feeling the benefit of AI tools. One of the things that we started to see, we have a small software engineering team. The junior developers are now generating a lot of code with AI. Initially, our VP of engineering kind of realized that he had turned into a human reviewer of AI-generated code, and it's a really good way to make someone hate their job. And I think you have to think about this too. Like, I've noticed people send me longer emails, they generate 25-page decks, and this is not useful to me because, it looks more polished, but then I'm doing a lot of work, or someone has to do a lot of work to review that. So think about, in the case of software, we wrote tools to do that code review in an automated fashion. And I think, think about how to do that in your business. It's also been for us sometimes it's just saying, hey, I see that you probably used AI to write this. Could you include in your prompt to write I don't know if people are familiar with TLDR, too long, didn't read, but give me the one sentence summary, bottom line up front, of the 25-page deck that you're sending me. We found that that's really helpful at actually thinking about making sure that this stuff scales in a way that supports the business, and we're not just doing more, we're actually doing better, we're doing the right things. So a couple of takeaways: empower the leaders, drive ownership for those junior people. One thing to mention, negotiate hard with any of these funded AI service companies. They're motivated to grow, so they will discount heavily. But think about whether each of those tools is going to rely on a lot of configuration to actually be useful. If it is, then maybe that's something for you to think about doing in-house. And I think in general, this really makes it all the more important to have the right people in the right seats, because everyone is doing a lot more. They can make something that looks polished. So if you don't have someone who cares about what they're doing, it's that PE stamp, it's that ownership in every seat in the organization, then it's not going to work. So all the more important to have the right people on the team. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Everybody know it's afternoon? We've moved from morning to afternoon. It's part of my discussion today. First, I want to thank John and the NY-GEO team for having us here today to talk about Concurrent AI, Brian and A1 for pulling this together. We are essentially agentic AI workflows for the built world. So I'm going to be talking to you about agents today and how you can utilize agents at scale in your enterprise to do some very sophisticated things that will save you time and money. So this is a format that John asked us to put together an executive summary on, stating the problem. So what is the problem that we're solving? We're solving the built world's problem around disparate workflows, fragmented sources, and the ability to get reliable and good information by which to build, right? And that is a common problem that all of us in the built world deal with. We have created a platform, Concurrent AI, which is a multi-agent platform that will allow you to do orchestration on
many of your aspects of your pre-construction process in this example to manage your work and your project. The inputs for this, and this is where everybody has a bit of an issue in terms of how do you start, where do I go? You have the ability to create what's called goal agents, utility agents, and learning agents by just providing input data. We heard data here from the esteemed panel here today is very, very critical to this. So what is your project spec? What is location? What is the goal of your project? Who's involved in your project? Proprietary information would be important to provide to this platform, this concurrent build platform, in order to run agentic AI methods and models to support your build. The results on this are absolutely extraordinary. You will see in this example, pre-construction between 50 and 84% reduction in time and cost around an actual pre-construction process by utilizing agents. They are more efficient. They are, in a sense, your digital workers that are available to you to run these processes. In the benefits, I mean, specifically what we're doing is we're focused on automating the pre-construction, permitting, regulatory and compliance, tax incentive, and community outreach aspects of a geothermal project. So let me talk about how you get there. So we talked about the workflows, owner-operators, regulators, designers. Everybody is working across disconnected systems, and it's one of the things that we have to deal with. We have fragmented information across, we heard a lot about standards this morning, regulations, research, specs, and tools that are slow and error-prone, and that's where we're trying to insert this agentic methodology. The question is, why now? Why do this now? And you heard some of the panelists talk about this. Well, other industries are adopting and have adopted or are moving quickly on the agentic model. The productivity in the built world, this is not me speaking, this is McKinsey, which is attributed at the end, has flatlined for decades. Margins are tight, complexity is at an all-time high, and just old workflows no longer scale. It's not possible to continue to compete with utilizing today's workflows. So generic AI in and of itself, you heard some of that here today, doesn't solve all of it. It prompts are somewhat one-dimensional, can get you the information that you need, are very, very good, but agents, pre-built, purpose-built agents are going to allow you to supercharge what you're doing in your build process. They actually can reason. They've got the ability to provide workflow information across your construction process. So, how it works. The input is essentially trusted sources from your project, along with project context that you're providing to the platform that will allow you to take proprietary docs, tools, project parameters, enter that in, and essentially it's going to take that information and create a goal agent. And a goal agent is an agent that says, okay, here are the aspects of your project and what your goal is and what you're trying to do. The platform itself, the agentic AI platform, will, in a multi-agent capacity, will take all this information and will utilize knowledge bases. You've heard LLMs, you've heard vector databases, et cetera, and utilize this to synthesize the information and provide you with an output. So a very simple example is we did a tech paper for geothermal rising on the Salton Sea permitting process for one of their projects. And it was a multi-year project in terms of being able to get this project. They had to deal with BLM, they had to deal with the federal agency, they had to deal with state and local agencies, and the permitting process took them years. By going back and replicating that process and utilizing agentic AI and its methods, it cut that time to permit to 50%, right? It would have saved them time and money by deploying it. The aspect of how are you going to monetize this and where does this begin begins with the ability to create a goal agent here with what your overriding objectives are, utilizing utility agent, I'll call it a task agent. This is your set of digital workers that are out working for you, along with an ambient agent, which I like to call it that because of the geothermal industry, an ambient agent, learning agent that is there all the time that is going to continue to provide you with detailed notice of changes or modifications. That could be a tax incentive, that could be a regulation, that could be something to do with compliance, it could be something to do with your community engagement. So, we have automated workflows which are going to allow you to keep on task, be much more efficient. We've got this knowledge synthesis that some of the panel talked about, which is really about data. If you hear the word data too many times today, that is essentially what is going to drive all of these technologies. And you've got what's called intelligent collaboration. So let me ask the crowd here, raise of hands, how many are utilizing some type of AI in their personal lives? Raise their hands. Okay, most. How many are utilizing AI in their professional lives? Okay, a little bit less. Okay, still pretty good, right? Intelligent collaborating is what the panel has been talking about, is the ability to have human in the loop. The ability where these models are going to run, they're going to be provided to you on a conceptual basis. We're not talking deep engineering design here, we're talking about pre-construction processes. There is a notion of theory of correctness that has come out from Phil Bernstein, who is the dean of Yale Architectural School, where he has just correctly said that AI is not ready for 3D modeling and engineering yet, right? It just is not there. So engineers in the room, I think John said it, I think it's something that is going to take a while for it to get there. But in terms of making your task and your workflows around permitting or regulatory are all going to be handled for you by these agents and can be done provided that we have the right setup of the program. So having said that, the agentic pre-construction use case that I have up here essentially is OMV Energy, along with Stanford, did a study on this, on their actual build, and they were able to drive 27% of their cost out of data collection as well as data acquisition, and part of their process went from 4 years to 2 years and had the ability to reduce their cost. If you're interested in looking at more, there's some great sources here if you want to take a snap of this around the Salton Sea model that I talked about. There's a video that describes the agentic AI model and how it can be used, particularly in the geothermal sense. And if you have information or you'd like information, please fill out the form and we'd be happy to get back with you. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Thomas Jay, and I'm a consultant at NYSERDA. That might mean something as part of this conversation, because if I were an employee of NYSERDA, I may not have been able to do this work. It was, so as much as we all so bullish about AI, government still does not work on the speed of AI. So there is some trepidation in terms of adopting AI, in terms of government. But on the other hand, what you heard today is there's a lot of use cases. And for the next 5 minutes, what I want to talk about is, I want to ask a different question. What happens when actual building owners, facility managers, engineer consultants that are specialized in the New York City market try to use generative AI in the real world? And my presentation is based on an initiative that brought these key stakeholders together over 6 meetings to figure out where Gen AI is actually being used for decarbonization and electrification, and where it is not. So we convened 2 working groups, one made out of New York City property owners and facility operators, and the other one made out of New York City practitioners of engineers and consultants. We had about a dozen or so owners. Some of them are marquee brands that if I would say them, you would recognize them. Similarly, on the engineering side, some of them are multinational engineering firms. So over the 6 meetings from last October, actually beginning of November until February 19th, exactly of this year, we went through use case discovery, we mapped issues, we prioritize issues and use cases, we validate use cases, and then we created a final report as of February 19th. That final report is currently being torn apart inside and outside of various different organizations, so we can actually share it with you all. I think the important part was this. We didn't start it with a cheerleading mission in mind. We had participants, and this is actually amazing, because as you heard earlier, the built environment is now known for being early adopters of technology. But I ran into some REITs, commercial real estate companies, that are all in on this technology. So when you say that engineers is going to, that uses AI is going to compete with engineer that doesn't, think about your clients is going to assume that you are using AI, and therefore you should adjust your fees accordingly. That came directly, essentially, from a REIT. So this is essentially where where the working group sees immediate value. Just to cut to the chase, the owner says, we have too much information. We have too much data, too much emails, too much documents. We don't have enough time to make decisions. And you know what? AI will make that worse, as you heard today. There will be more information, more documents, more even data. But how do you then use the data to speed up decision-making? So what they found useful were interpreting drawings, diagnosing the performance of their property portfolio, analyzing energy data automatically, and screening buildings when they going out and buy buildings, what kind of compliance risk are they facing? Engineer says, we're facing with too many iterations. So their priority are having a co-pilot for code compliance. Report generation, engineer doesn't like to write, you heard this before, and AI is a wonderful writing assistant. Interpret legacy drawings, and that I don't mean you gave the AI the raw AutoCAD file or Cadence file. This is paper drawings that may be scanned in at some point that can barely pass an optical character recognition. We have so many of those as in our built environment today. And be able to leverage AI and do continuous auditing or continuous fault detection and diagnostic workflows. So the common thread is not some magic automation. It's fewer review cycles, fewer handoff, and faster movement from messy inputs to defensible next steps. So I think this matters for geothermal also. Included as part of this initiative is we recruited 2 academic teams, one from Columbia University in the School of Engineering and a PhD candidate, and another from City University of New York, from the City College of New York in the computer science department and the students there. So together, these 2 academic teams created well over a dozen AI demonstrations. These are codes, these are agents, these are databases, these are chunked documents. They're all public. There's no private information, there's no proprietary information that's used in this exercise. And they're all hosted on Hugging Face. And once this report can go public, there will be links in it to access all of this. So what they found through the engagement of the academic advisors is AI does not solve everything, but AI can be very useful even in compliance and engineering sensitive workflows if validation is built in. That's why some of the most impactful prototypes weren't the flashiest ones. They were some of the ones that paired a engineering agent versus a QA/QC agent, and then you will have a third agent that reconciled the two. They use, instead of just bringing in megabytes of documents straight into the context window, you chunk them up and you put them into a vector database and you use that as your ground truth. So these are much more realistic AI usage scenarios from real world practitioners that's doing business in New York today. Now, we face a lot of cross-cutting issues. I couldn't begin to identify all of them, and some of them you already heard already, so I just limit to 4. First is data. Data are fragmented, outdated, or buried in a lot of PDF documents. AI doesn't remove that. AI just allows you to interact with all that mess. So it's still better to start with clean data. Second, governance and trust. That means who approved the output? Who approved the input? What is the source of truth that the large language model can base its output on? Now, because if these are not clear, teams are either over-trust AI and have red face moments when they hallucinate, or they reject it completely. Return on investment, that's pretty much underpinning everything we do. But the metric is not, can AI write something faster than humans? Is, did we reduce the review loops? Did we speed up making decisions? Did we avoid rework? But how do you know that if you're not tracking it? And this leads me to my last point, workflow integration. They may be great tools for individuals within a professional environment, but they may not speed the end-to-end part of the work cycle unless they're fully integrated. So the near-term value of AI, as defined by these working groups, is they're not really there to replace your skilled staff. But what they're really there is to making them much more productive, to make a decision much faster. Now, I think, although these are not generic to Gen AI, I want you to know that I believe all of these things apply to geothermal and Gen AI. I just want to share one last thing. I got onto this AI bandwagon just after COVID. Why? Because I had a very bad bout of COVID, and I felt like I lost a step. I was looking for a tool to help me doing things like, where did I put that? Where did I remember that document in? Because over the collection of my engineering career, I have thousands of papers. I can't find them. So I started looking at those tools back in 2023, 2024. And right now, I have fully integrated that into my personal workflow, which, again, I could not do if I was actually an employee of NYSERDA. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. I think we'll open it up for questions. We've got limited time, and I think we stand between you all and lunch, so we'll keep it short. I think this hand went up fastest there, and we've got someone over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Jenkins. I'm from Sierra Club, Connecticut. I'm gonna be as nice as I can. I'm an environmental justice campaign organizer, and I am really troubled by this entire panel and by this entire production right now. And the reason why I say that is because AI data centers are going up in Black communities throughout this country, and it's stealing our water. I don't understand how y'all are not creative enough to figure out how we can use AI to not steal our water, how to function those AI data centers to make them not steal our water, to be more energy efficient and compliant to human life, that it is negatively affecting throughout this world. And I am just wondering, what are you gonna do with AI when there's no water? Because I see this young man here drinking water, and I see all of us here drinking water. What we gonna do when there's no water? And I'm really troubled, I'm sorry, by every single person on this panel. I'm really troubled. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for that comment. Question in there. I think, I just want to first validate what you're saying. I think it's an obvious, real concern and something that we all have to face, not in this panel, in this room, but as a society. I think you're bringing up a really important and critical issue. And I'm happy to have any of the panelists jump in, but I think the thing that I'll add is that, I totally agree. I think that we as an industry should be thinking about how geothermal can reduce the impact that data centers have on our collective experience. And I think that this is a good example of why adopting AI within our industry is so important, because we have to keep pace. The data center industry is moving at an incredible pace, right? And so to not use the tools to help us solve our own problems, I think, as you pointed out, would be a big mistake. And so I think, my takeaway from this was that no one's saying that we shouldn't do that. I think we're still understanding, because the tools are still so new, how do we leverage them in the way that we can sort of solve those very real problems that you're talking about. If anyone else on the panel wants to sort of pick that up or jump to the next question. Okay. Oh yeah. So Matt pointed out that we do have a data center panel coming up after lunch, so perhaps that one will help us answer some of those questions. I do think that we are at time, and I don't want to hold anyone from their lunch, so please give a round of applause to our panelists, and thank you all for coming, and please feel free to reach out with any other questions.